is also on board with inspection and investigation. Thank you. France.
France supports UN inspectors, the complete and total removal and dismantling of any chemical weapons that are found. France supports a criminal investigation, and if the Assad government is found to have launched these chemical weapons on its own people, then they will be held to pay.
So France is also open to inspection and investigation, okay?
The United Kingdom is also interested in a criminal investigation as well as the inspection of and elimination of chemical weapons and further weapons.
Okay.
The Iranian delegation wants to condemn the use of all chemical weapons, as it's a stance that we've always taken. As for investigations into it, I feel that since Syria is a sovereign state, it should have a say in the matter in which investigations take place and what investigations occur and how they proceed. As for us, we're not opposed to an investigation, but we will have no UN inspections, or if there are stockpiles found from the rebels. We do not believe that any Western power should be able to go in there. We believe that we should be allowed to dismantle and take those weapons out of Syria.
We meaning who? Iran?
Yeah, Iran.
Okay.
We'd be open. We'd be open to solving that, as we stated in the Iran-Iraq war when a lot of chemical weapons went missing. We want to make sure that none are used on innocents.
Okay.
But again, you won't find them with the Syrian government. They'll be with the rebel stockpiles.
But you still willing to lead investigation?
Yeah, we can lead the investigation. We don't believe in a UN investigation because I feel that most UN powers believe that the Assad regime used chemical weapons wrongly so, and I'm not necessarily sure that we would trust the findings of these very biased sources.
So, do you believe that an independent body like the International Criminal Court would be brought into this issue?
Depending upon what the Assad government chooses, because this is in fact a sovereign state, and I think that having a bunch of Western powers deciding its fate seems a little imperialistic.
Okay, we'll come back to that. France, would you like to just write down? I'll come back to you. You have an opportunity to respond. Thank you, Iran. United States?
The United States takes the chemical weapons situation very seriously. In Syria, we 100% support the allowance, I guess you could say, of the UN to come in and conduct their inspections. United States intelligence has reported that most recently, on November 24th, there was what was believed to be a chemical attack in northwestern Aleppo. The Iranians and the Russians and the Syrians have been claiming that this was a rebel attack. However, our intelligence has found, in fact, the opposite. It was a canister of tear gas. It wasn't chlorine, but we have had several reports on the ground that there is chlorine production within Syria. So this is something that's very concerning to us, and we would like for the UN to step in and investigate.
So open to UN investigation.
Absolutely. And again, I just want to add, backing on what Fran said, if there was found to be Assad and his regime using chemical weapons, a more severe response than what occurred in April of 2016 and April of 2017 would occur.
Okay. And in U.S., from the United States perspective, if we find chemical weapons and it was determined that it's either the rebels or the Assad regime that used those weapons, and we don't see any cooperation from them to let the international community in to investigate and inspect, would the United States consider unilateral actions?
At this point, that is sensitive information that we don't want to discuss at this stage.
Okay, thank you. Saudi Arabia.
Saudi Arabia supports the investigation, especially since the government is at fault with these chemical humanitarian travesty. And also, we also support the U.S. with the airstrikes and thought that the 2014 and 2016 strikes were too friendly and that they should have been more intense on parties involved.
So Saudi Arabia is calling for more intense strikes
Yes.
or reprisals. Okay. And is that, yeah, so we've heard from everyone. First had a concern before I go into some other things. Yeah.
I had a question for Iran. Are you saying that you don't support the International Criminal Court or have any faith in it?
I didn't say that. I said that it would be remiss in us to decide for Syria on what to do within its sovereign borders.
What would be your concerns about going to the International Criminal Court?
Because
What
we're
would
in-
Iran, or does
Because
Iran have any
we'd be
concerns about that?
inviting people into a country that is not ours. So in my house, you're not going to be able to invite people to my house.
But I'm asking,
without
do you
any
have any
permission.
concerns about the International Criminal Court conducting the investigation? Does
I
Iran
didn't
have any?
say that. I said completely that we needed to.
I'm
talk
asking
with
you
the
if you would support it,
The
the
minister-
International Criminal Court.
If the Syrian government supports it, then we would support it. Because we're the only representation here for Syria, unless Russia also is included.
The Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation would like to point out that this is not the first time that weapons inspections or chemical weapons or weapons of mass destruction are used for thinly veiled excuse for regime change backed by Western ideals.
Yeah.
Why would this be any different from previous examples in Iraq and Syria? Iraq and Libya. Syria being the step 3.
So Russia, when you say Western powers, who do you have in mind, so that they may have an opportunity to respond?
I mean, we can look at invasion of Libya, where supposedly they were just going to create no-fly zone to protect humanitarian interests of Libyan citizens. Is that what happened, Mr. USA? No. Your airstrikes and the airstrikes of other nations was meant to depose the government of Libya, and in response, the entire country was thrown into chaos, and in chaos still lies.
So what does the U.S. have to respond, and then I'll come back to
Syria has
Iran.
been thrown into chaos before the United States had any sort of policy there. The United States has been very forthright in regards to setting up an irreversible political process that would be inclusive of civil society and opposition groups within Syria. If the Syrian people decide to uphold the Assad regime, then that's something that we could live with. But to accuse us at this point in time of wanting to change the regime when we've been in fact fighting a very serious terroristic threat that's encompassing the whole eastern region of your country is an absolute joke.
Okay, Iran.
So in funding the rebels, you don't think that that's trying to instill a regime change?
What rebels have? The Kurds that have been pretty much living on their own in the northern part of your country that the Assad regime cannot govern?
My country?
They're also in your country. That's correct.
That's
All right, well, at least going back to the original question, if we're viewing acceptance of the ICC as a yardstick for these talks, we're kind of remiss here given the United States position. Let's see how our position.
Not only that, but the United States
Well, I was
tends to
just-
make deals and then back out of them.
The last time I
And
checked,
then
your allies
reinstill
were not members.
sanctions for no reason.
Well,
Just saying.
my concern was that you had, it felt like you were expressing that you did not think that the International Criminal Courts were an unbiased actor when you had gone to them to protest the United States pulling out of the JCPOA.
But my point is that the United States.
And
My
does that
point
bring up
is,
the-
my point is that the International Criminal Court and other institutions are completely unbiased actors. You seem to think so in the actions that you've taken. I believe so. I believe that Iran was right to go to the International Criminal Court.
But that's us filing it on our own sovereignty, right? We can go
I'm
and
asking. My
ask
question
them
is,
to decide.
would Iran support?
If
the
Assad
International
is
Criminal Court?
asked and Assad agrees with it, then
So
I
that is
see
an
no
that is an
opposition.
actor that we could all agree to that could investigate here. Does anyone have any qualms with the International Criminal Court?
It seems like so will France sponsor a resolution that allows the ICC to take charge of the investigation and conduct the investigation into
France would gladly
okay.
propose such a resolution.
Okay. So with that in mind, if such a resolution were to come forward to investigate first who used those weapons in the past, what are your positions? Who would oppose it? A resolution from France to investigate, to let the ICC investigate the use.
Before any proposals involving the ICC, China would like to ask, wouldn't it be more crucial to first come to a consensus stating that the ICC is irrelevant and a court that has authority? Would this proposal even mean anything when not everybody in this room agrees and adheres to the ICC? Because we have some countries here that do not.
Which ones do you have in mind?
The first one that comes to mind is the United States.
Would the United States have any objection to
Yes.
having the ICC lead investigations of
Yes,
this sort?
and the basis for this is the fact that the ICC has not shown any capability in the past to investigate chemical weapons, their procurement, and their use, whereas the UN does have a functioning body already set up to do this. So again, we are accepting of an investigation, but we think that it should be conducted through the United Nations.
Saudi Arabia fully agrees with that. We do not support the ICC.
Okay.
Turkey position is the more strong institution would be, it would have a good outcome. So if most of the country think that United Nations has a strong body and a body that can be stronger than ICC, so we definitely support it.
Okay. So it seems like there is some consensus about letting investigation take place under the leadership of the United Nations rather than the ICC. Is that a fair assessment of the discussions on this particular point? Okay. So the next point is refugees. We've heard from different countries that are involved. Do you have specific proposals, the countries that are most affected by the issue of flows of refugees? Any specifics that you would like to propose to the Council, any measures that you would like to propose so that we can discuss them? France?
France would like to increase foreign aid given to Turkey to deal with the refugee crisis. However, it would also tie that aid to job training and job economic location for the refugees.
So foreign aid to Turkey and tied to training.
Training for the refugees.
For the
they
refugees,
can enter the
so that they can
workforce.
enter the workforce in Turkey. Yes.
Clarification, are you looking for a eventual return of refugees when possible, or are you training them to incorporate permanently in the local economy wherever they have to be at this time?
France is looking to incorporate them into the local economy until they can be relocated to their home
Or
country.
repatriation being the ultimate goal?
The ultimate goal is for them to be relocated in their home country, but until then, allow them to interact with the local economy.
Okay. So encourage Turkey to take more refugees, give them aid, and tie the aid to a condition, that of training the refugees so that they can enter the workforce. Okay?
Yeah.
but I think our priority for in regard to refugees, we're looking for the more funds, and we ask from the participant countries to help Turkey in this regard. So we are happy that providing places for the refugees, and we are helping them. On the other hand, so it's gonna have effect on our budget, on our economic, and our national security. So that's why one of our our proposal in this regard would be that every country should specify like how much money they're gonna help Turkey to deliver services for the refugees. And on the other hand, we also need for some supports in case of to maintain security, because we don't know who are gonna come inside Syria, inside Turkey, under the name of refugee. So we have to bolster our security measures.
So before I go to the two of you, just to friends, the proposal you're making, does that only apply to Turkey or to other countries in the region that are affected by the flow of refugees as well? Lebanon,
This particular
Jordan.
one will only apply to Turkey. However, depending on the success of the agreement, we would look towards expanding it to other countries.
Okay, Saudi Arabia.
Saudi Arabia will not give Turkey any refugee funds. We have already given over $100 million to Syria, and since 2016 have had about 2.5 million overstays by Syrian refugees, and have given residency to 100,000 Syrians. So we feel like we've already done our part, and we will not give you all anything.
3 million refugees that we're taking care of, 100,000 versus 3 million.
Okay, that's the Saudi position on this specific issue.
Well, we have
Israel
2.5
had
million of overstays in our country that are refugees from Syria. So we feel like we've been doing our part, even though we've not given them residency because they didn't apply for residency.
But when we say, I said we can. So there's, from the security perspective, as I said, we bolster our security measures. We will not let any terrorist groups to attack Turkey, but we can. It's going to be a warning for the regional countries that there might be attack from refugees who are settled, whether in Turkey or in Syria. So if they not support this issue, so then it's going to have a maybe worse repercussion in the region. So I mean, we respect each country's decisions, but this is what it is. Refugees are crimes. So if no one shares their border, maybe Saudi Arabia doesn't care about this, but these refugees seek paths to go to Europe. So who are they?
Okay. Thank you. Israel had something to say or something?
We just had a point of clarification. You already asked the question regarding whether other countries would be covered.
Okay.
We're not specifically opposed to giving funding to Turkey in regards to refugees, but we do have concerns that other countries who are affected, such as Saudi Arabia, would not also immediately receive any sort of, or Iraq for that matter.
So we are, because maybe we are hosting the majority part of the refugees there.
Okay.
True.
So-
I think it's important to remember the contributions of the Jordanians as well. They also have a very large number, and it's a significantly smaller country than Turkey is. We're very grateful to both Turkey and Jordan and other nations hosting Syrian refugees, including Saudi Arabia and our many European friends.
So are they, any countries willing to take the lead on coordinating international aid to the countries most affected by the flow of refugees?
The UK would definitely be interested in talks with that,
Okay.
contributing with that.
Not just contributing, but coordinating the
Yeah,
international
coordinating,
aid.
but also more focusing on the resettlement of
Okay.
refugees rather than the settlement into our country.
When you say resettlement, you mean what?
More focus on internally displaced
Okay.
persons in Syria rather than not just refugees, but
I don't see a lot of enthusiasm regarding the refugee.
It is the position
issue,
of the
is
United
it?
States that most of the progress that's been made on refugees thus far has been through bilateral agreements as opposed to multilateral forums such as this one. So we would like to continue pursuing that as our primary approach.
Okay. All right. So,
Happy to talk
See-
about brands of water for the principals meeting though.
I'm still keeping it on the agenda and see what the principals have to say about it. But again, third point here is ceasefire. In the past, we've tried to have a resolution on ceasefire, but it didn't pass. A main contention was, well, if we have ceasefire, it should be all parties. Some disagreed that, if you have all parties, the fight against ISIS will will be weakened. So you need a consistent use of force against ISIS in order to defeat them. So those who argue that propose that the ceasefire only applies to the fighting between the rebels and the Assad regime. Now, is that we believe that for the humanitarian aid to be effective in Syria, there must be some security conditions on the ground. And as long as the fighting is continue to go, we can't effectively have aid delivered to the people who most need it. So, with that regard, what should be our general positions on the idea of having a ceasefire? We all earlier agreed that it is necessary. How long can it go? Who is to enforce it? And what specific groups should we actually apply the ceasefire to? All groups, including terrorist groups, or only all groups excluded terrorist groups? And I will start with Saudi Arabia.
We do want a ceasefire. We have no stance on it, on if it included or did not include terrorist groups. We just think a ceasefire is important, at least between the regime and the rebel groups that are not ISIS or we don't have a stance on.
So all groups, including terrorist groups.
We don't have a stance on that.
Oh,
we
you
just
don't
think
have a
that
stance, okay.
we just think there needs to be a ceasefire between the main parties.
Or between the main parties.
Yeah, that's what I.
Okay. And how long of the ceasefire would you support? With Saudi Arabia going on? Weeks,
Until
months?
until the conflict is complete.
So immediate ceasefire until we find
A
a solution. Okay. The United States.
The United States' position has and will remain that our number one priority is to defeat ISIS. Right now, we've backed ISIS into a small pocket along the eastern Euphrates, along the border with Iraq. All by committing to a ceasefire, even against a group like ISIS, we'd be reverting all the work that we've done in the first place. Additionally, we should separate the idea of a ceasefire when talking about terrorist groups. Right now, again, where we're operating is primarily in an arena that's very far removed from where the actual crisis is about to happen, which is Idlib province in the northwest portion of Syria. So our position at this point is that if there is a ceasefire negotiation, it should be very clear to separate who is a rebel and who is a terrorist. And right now we know tangibly that ISIS are a terrorist group and we are fighting them and remain committed to fighting them in the southeast portion.
So in your view, who would be a terrorist? Beside
HTS,
ISIS?
HTS, the group that has splintered from who was al-Nusra, that was linked with al-Qaeda. They're supposedly still have ties with al-Qaeda, but right now HTS is a terrorist group, and our fear is that the Syrians, the Russians, and the Iranians are targeting all of Idlib province with the idea that the rebels that have been pushed into this province are terrorists, and that's not the case.
Israel, could you write down and I'll come back to you and you have an opportunity to say whatever you have to say. The U.S. still.
Yes, just again to expand on my colleague's point, in this conflict, it has been characterized by every major power and principal actor in the conflict calling those that they're at war with terrorists. Now, whether we're talking about the Kurdish militias in the north, or we're talking about Hezbollah, or we're talking about Hayat al-Shem, or we're talking about ISIS, or we're talking even occasionally about the SDF itself, everyone is calling everyone terrorists. So what would be great would be if, for the time being, instead of referring to terrorists as a large group, which doesn't help with sort of the disambiguation of the ceasefire, we focus and we say, we just all kill ISIS, because I believe that everyone here agrees that ISIS should be killed. Can I get a show of hands, who doesn't want to kill ISIS?
Doesn't? Oh, sorry.
Yeah.